60% of consumers are more likely to do business with a company that has a strong personal brand. I've been in business for over 2 decades, and once I started my personal brand, a lot of opportunities started to follow. I've been interviewed on Fox Business, Small Business Feature for US Bank, becoming the Wisconsin Small Business Person of the Year. All those things happened because of a personal brand that already existed. So today, I wanted to bring you Ashley Stahl. She has built a massive personal brand herself and has had multiple viral TED Talks. Now she helps others building their personal brand for themselves. Ashley, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to talk about this.
Yeah, me too. So, first of all, before we kind of get started, I want to hear, how did you get into this space? How did you start to focus on building your own personal brand?
Yeah, it's actually a very unexpected journey. So, I started my career in my early 20s in national security and counterterrorism during the Obama administration, of all places.
Okay.
And I was really good at learning languages. I was very impacted by 9/11 as far as just having family on the East Coast. And I just remember telling myself, I'm going to go change the world and I'm going to protect people and help people. And my best skill set was my ability to communicate. And so I thought, I'm going to join the CIA. I'm going to be an agent. I'm going to use communication to make good things happen. And I did everything. I got the graduate degree. I learned the languages. I fluent in French, pretty conversational in Arabic, all these things. And I landed at the Pentagon in Washington, D.C. And I remember getting an award for my work. I was like maybe 22, 23 years old. And this girl walked into the award ceremony. I'd say a woman. I mean, she's a woman, I guess. She was like 22, 23 years old. And she was just radiating. And I said to her, like, you're radiating. What did you do? And she said, oh, well, I gave a TEDx talk at the UN last week and I'm still on a high from it. And I said to her, wow, I've heard of those. Like, I would love to do one of those someday. And it sounded so far over the rainbow.
Yeah.
And she looked at me like a cartoon and said, oh, I'm sure you will. And then next thing I know, I'm in Istanbul for a work assignment. There's protests going on in Taksim Square. I think it's like 2012 at this point. And she shoots me a text. Hey, I recommended you for a TED Talk at Berkeley, a TEDx talk. I think they're going to give it to you. So good luck. And I literally was sitting in a protest, like a civil protest. And I looked down at my phone and I rushed back to the motel. And I mean, I don't even know what iPhone we were on in 2012, like iPhone 2, I don't know,
Yeah.
iPhone 5. So I remember I Googled on my Safari, what is a speaking reel? Because the people from TEDx Berkeley messaged me asking for any speaking reel or any materials. Literally didn't have that, of course. I'd never spoken on a stage in my life. So I remember putting the hotel, like the bathroom, the curtain behind my head and using it as a backdrop and propping my iPhone against the bathroom mirror and starting to talk on video at my iPhone. I don't even know what I said. I emailed it, and somehow it was like some sort of stroke of luck, honestly. I got myself this TEDx talk. And for the 3 months leading up to the event, I could not sleep at night. I was, it was like 51% best thing ever, 49% worst thing ever. I was so scared. And finally, I just told myself, you know what? I'm going to practice so hard that I can guarantee I'm going to do well. I'm just going to
So good.
decide.
Right. It's all in the preparation, 1000%.
Yeah.
Why do you believe that business owners should be building their personal brand?
So my TEDx talk was the beginning of my personal brand. It hit the internet and I was able to secure 80% of my leads from my business from that one TEDx talk. 1 9-minute speech gave me 80% of my business leads for the years to follow. I ended up doing a second TEDx talk in 2019. Between those two, I did around $2 to $3 million of revenue from leads that came from those TEDx talks. One thing people don't know is if you do well on the TEDx channel, sometimes TED will pick you up and put you on their channel. Both channels have 40 million subscribers. Even if you don't want to be a professional speaker and you just want to get your business out there, to me, it's like you can go on a bunch of stages that have 50 people in the audience, or you can go on a stage that has 40 million people subscribed. So I ended up not only getting international licensing deals on my courses from that, but I got a spokesperson deal and I got about 5 different outreaches for book deals, ended up taking one of those. And I got a speaking agent, put me on a speaking tour, and my keynote fee went from 0 to 30K over 5 years. So I remember looking at those TEDx talks and thinking your personal brand is really like If you look at the internet, it's like a bunch of islands, right? You have TEDx is like an island, and I'm not affiliate. My agency, we've written and booked, helped write and book more than 100 TEDx talks, but we're not affiliated with them directly, and we take a lot of pride in that because we can kind of understand their systems and optimize for that. But um, yeah, I look at the internet and I think, okay, TEDx is an island. It's a place you can go park a brand asset. So is Twitter or X. So is Instagram, TikTok. And the thing people need to realize is that you can't try and spread yourself thin on too many islands without mastering one. And so TEDx became a brand island for me that I was like, whoa, this just exploded my brand. The amount. And if you think about it, as business owners, we're pushing all the time. We're not afraid to get into our masculine energy. And, I think a trademark of an evolved soul is that they can walk through both energies, masculine and feminine, output and receiving, right? So I think a lot of us are doing a lot in business, and it's really nice to have a personal brand that can do things for you so that it's bringing you opportunities and you don't have to be in pursuit all the time. So, personal brands, I think, are not only non negotiable from a lead generation standpoint, but press doesn't always mean sales, right? Like you were talking about being in Fox and all these different business channels. But what it does mean is trust, and trust
Mhm.
causes sales. So people aren't necessarily going to see you on the news. And I mean, if anybody thinks about moments they've watched the news, it's pretty
Yeah.
passive viewership, right? Like, when's the
Right.
last time you grabbed a pen and wrote down a news guest name? Almost never.
Mhm.
But if somebody wants to do business with you and they see that, your likelihood for your sale to close is much higher. So I think there's different goals with different brand assets. But I almost see it like understand what skill set is tied to all the islands. So for TEDx, a lot of clients have come into my company because we craft keynotes and books and TEDx talks and all sorts of things. And they'll say, well, I don't really know if I want to be a speaker, but I want this for my business. But what if I flop and I don't do well? And it's like, well, you don't really need to be a professional speaker. You need to be committed to excellence. You need to be committed to focusing on this for the time that you're in it. And then it does what it does for you. And it's a layer of your layer cake. So over the past 12 years, ever since I left the Pentagon, I ended up starting a career coaching business. There's a whole story there on that. But um, and I built a personal brand and I tinkered with everything. I went on the news, I did the stuff, I wrote a book, got a book deal. And there's just nothing that has transformed my career quite like having one speech, and you can park it on a TEDx channel, or you can give it over and over and over again to new audiences.
Yeah.
And audiences are everywhere. Eventbrite, meetup.com. You can go join groups and be a speaker and offer yourself up. So the sky is, I think, endless for that.
Yeah. Well, and one of the reasons I really wanted to build my personal brand and not just my businesses, I think a lot of people listening, they've been the face of their business before, and they don't want to be the everything to that business. They want to
Yeah.
kind of hide behind the curtain. And that is how I've gotten my businesses now, but I'm building my personal brand so that one day if I go to sell these businesses, I have this audience built up with my personal brand that I could go on to selling the next thing, and I already have that, like, the lead source, like, built in, which I think is just another way of having security as we're building these assets too.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that people have to remember the research really does show that no matter how much you have a brand that is not your face,
Yeah.
that people buy from people, and they
Yes.
do buy from brands as well. But if you are a brand like Patagonia, for example, and the founder gets up there and shares a powerful story about why they started Patagonia, the meaning behind it, the amount of sales conversion is inevitably going to go up. And so it doesn't mean you need to completely come out of the personal brand closet and have a huge personal brand around yourself, but you definitely want to 80/20 it. And that's why at Wise Whisper Agency, we've been so passionate about helping clients
Mm.
craft their TEDx talks and get booked there because while we book people on all sorts of stages, I just think, well, why not start at the top?
Yeah, so good. And I was actually just with a friend. She started a supplement line, and I've seen it on Instagram constantly, every day posting, right? And I've never once bought them or considered buying them. Then I go sit in person with her. We're in a room and she's telling everybody her story. And I immediately go, I need these,
Yeah.
right? Because like you just said, when you start to share that story, there's a different level of connection just seeing the product, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
and we can
so
also
good.
paint results through stories. Like if you think
Yeah.
about having a business and putting testimonials on your website, that's one piece of the story. But
Yeah.
if you can tell somebody about a client and who they were before they found you, what happened when they found you, and what happened because of it, that
Mm,
storytelling closes sales too. And I'm not a very salesy person. I actually just hired a full time salesperson because I'm like, oh my gosh, this is not my gift at
yeah.
Wise Whisper Agency. But I will say that it is powerful to see the translation on the other side of what you can inspire through
Mhm.
bringing your voice to the surface. And we have to remember that if you close your eyes right now when you're listening to this podcast and you think of any big moment in time where you made a big decision, chances are a conversation happened with somebody else
Mm.
that moved something for you. Maybe that somebody else was yourself. And it's the words that went through your head and the feelings you got from them that made that decision. And that's what storytelling telling does.
Yeah.
And that what you have the opportunity to do through a brand.
Hey, are you a business owner that's looking to not just increase their revenue, but actually have it positively impact your profit without you working more? Because let's be honest, there isn't any more time in the day. If so, I want to invite you to my free training called Protect Your Profit. I'm going to be breaking down our 3-part well-oiled operations framework. We're going to be going over the plan, the people, and the process. This training is completely free. We've already had over 100,000 small business owners join us, as this is one of our most popular trainings in Your Unlock, because we've got another one coming up very soon and it will be live. The strategy I'll share in this training is how we landed on the Inc. 5000 fastest growing companies in America list the last 2 years in a row. And I'll show you how to create a winning team of revenue generators, people that actually make you money, not cost you money, even if you don't think you can afford it. Go to welloiledclass.com and get registered for free. You'll walk away from this session with strategies you can actually implement and apply immediately, as well as I'll be gifting my 16-page hiring handbook, how to recruit, hire, and train top-tier talent. So come hang out with me and a few other 100 small business owners who are all looking to scale their business while scaling back their time. So get signed up for free at welloiledclass.com or click the link in the show notes, and I will see you there.
Yeah. Okay, so if somebody's listening and says, okay, this is the year I'm going to start my personal brand,
Yeah.
where do they start? What do you recommend?
I think one of the worst things you can do is start a brand that doesn't align with your core skill set. So, for example, if there's anything I know about myself, I tried to, it's so funny. I've had such massive success in areas that are aligned with my skills. So, TEDx, for example, my first TEDx talk, 3 million views. The second one, 12 million views, top 100 on the I had no experience speaking.
Yeah.
Why did I have success? Because words are my gift. And it's not just about writing something that moves people, it's about delivery, right? The best speakers are actors. Just as much as they're speakers, right? So that's my gift. I was using my God given gifts. Somebody listening here, maybe your gift is aesthetics, like where your skills lies aesthetics. Then Pinterest, Instagram, those mediums are going to be better places for you to double down on. That being said, a TEDx talk is anywhere from 8 to 10 minutes. That's 3 to 6 pages, or 8 to 18 minutes, 3 to 6 pages. That's not a lot of a lift for you to take on. So whether you have a firm like Wise Whisper Agency or yourself, organizing that TEDx talk, I'm really inspired by the brand. And I think that what it's doing for people in business is just so potent. And there's so many YouTube channels you can explore, partnerships to get on, because there's audiences already built in. But again, that's if your skill set is words
Yeah.
and you're an extrovert. There's a lot of words people that are introverts, and they're meant to be writing behind their laptop alone at a coffee shop. And I send them all my love because I have them all hired at Wise Whisper full time.
Mhm.
And so I think it's about really going inward and saying all these places are powerful,
Yeah.
but how do I show up the most powerfully? And if you don't know the answer to that, which you probably do, but if you don't, ask your friends, what do you think, is my unique ability? Where have I shown up at my best, in your opinion?
So good. So I think a lot of business owners, they're visionaries, they're ideas people, they're coming up with new ideas constantly. How key has consistency in your identity then, right?
Yeah.
I mean, shiny object syndrome can kill a brand and
Oh,
kill that
yeah.
brand identity. So I'd love your take on that, Ashley.
I have a real hot take on that, and it comes from my friend Andrea Crowder. Her and I were talking about relevance, and so many entrepreneurs, like, the truth is, you spend 3 years building a cooking business, and you might be tired of cooking by the end of it.
Yeah.
So here's a couple things. Number one, you can always hand off and delegate 95% of the work. There's always going to be that piece that is your unique ability. And people who exit companies see it all the time. They lose the founder and that little 5% unique ability that they were making magic happen through. So you can't lose sight of that. But I can say most things can be handed off and built teams around. So I would not tell anyone, if you built a successful brand, to just toss it. But I will say that when you become very relevant as a brand, and this is from my conversation with Andrea Crowder, we were exploring the idea that that relevance comes from a deep sense of resonance.
Mm.
Like, you deeply resonate with what you're sharing. There's something so deep inside of you that got you moving in the first place. And what we can't gauge in the same way as when we were starting out is if something inside of us is as deep. When we start something, it's like a gravitational pull from the universe, and we are so poured in, and we start to get met by the universe, and it's so exciting. When we think about new offerings, we're not necessarily in the same head or heart space.
Mm.
And so I think it's about really respecting what you built, but also remembering that if you have a deep sense of resonance, that will make you relevant. And you do not have to be afraid to start peppering new content pillars
Mm.
into your content to help your audience raise their hand if they're the right fit for this other thing you're doing. You just need to do a resonance check with yourself.
Mm.
Is this something you deeply resonate with? Is this something you're just doing?
Yeah. Because when you're passionate about it, this should come so easily to you. Now, as somebody who has dialed in my messaging, it's not that I'm bored with my content. Sometimes I'm just like, I don't know what else to say. I feel like I have said it over and over, but what I realize is people need to hear it over and over, right? So I don't have to sometimes look for new things. It's just, how can I say the same thing in a different way to catch people's eyes, right? So I really just want to encourage everybody listening, staying in that consistency, right? Like what Ashley just said, like what is truly resonating with you that you want to pick and have be part of your brand identity. So I think it's
Yeah,
good to be clear.
what you're saying is powerful. And I think on top of that, remember, the stories you share online and long form or short form content do not have to be your own stories. If you look at my TEDx talk called How to Figure Out What You Really Want, I open up with my dad in the kitchen getting a phone call on a Friday afternoon that I was kidnapped.
Wow.
And that's a pretty big open loop. That talk is kind of the structure for how our content team sees, short talks, whether it's a keynote or a TEDx. So if anybody's thinking about writing a short talk, that How to Figure Out What You Really Want talk is a good example. But I open up the talk with a story about my dad. That's not really a story, but I'm mentioned in the story, but it's not my story. So I want to remind everybody, you don't need to feel pressure as a storyteller or content creator or personal brand builder to always be at the forefront with your personal stories. You can share stories of other people. And if you look at politicians, that's one of the most important things they do on the campaign trail is they talk about other people's stories.
Yeah. So with the TEDx stages and things like that, who should be considering doing something like that?
I just saw a TEDx talk come out from a 7-year-old. So, I mean, they have TEDx high school.
Okay.
I think it's really somebody that just feels like they have something in their heart to say. They don't necessarily need to know what it is they have to say. We have a really powerful team. Our executive creative director spent over a decade at Apple and was creating decks that were presented to Steve Jobs. She was helping craft speeches for his executive team. So we are truly a team of world-class visionaries. And I've really up-leveled myself through my team because I started this business thinking I'm a great writer. I'm the best one to be writing these, and I've out-hired myself. The people that I have are even better than me, which is such a cool feeling.
Yeah.
So I will say, whether you work with an agency or not, you do want to have help if you're not a good writer. So, and you need to remember these talks are built into two pieces. Number one is what you're actually saying, and number two is how you're delivering it. So you can get a writer for helping you creatively brainstorm. And you have to remember that not all writers are creative brainstormers. A lot of them are executors. So that's why all of our calls with clients have a creative director on them.
Mhm.
But anybody, I think that's what I love about the TED and TEDx platform and admire about them is that it's really about anybody that feels like they have an idea we're spreading inside of them. And if you
Mm.
don't know what that is, just get help to figure out what it
Yeah.
is.
Well, and the good part is we're all business owners. So we all have a mission, right?
Yeah.
So look at what is your company mission and go deeper to ask yourself, like, what is your personal mission? I know everybody listening has something to share for sure.
Yeah.
So that's incredible.
Yeah.
What are some strategies that you've done to scale your brand and to get more people to take notice of you?
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, I feel like there's some organic brand assets that are always going to be powerful. So some people double down into blog posting if they have a writing skill set and they blog post on all sorts of sites. I had a blog as a columnist for Forbes for 8, 9 years. I wrote almost 600, 700 blog posts. So that's a brand island for me. That's a brand asset for me. Right. But I would say when it comes to building my brand outside of TEDx and giving those 2 talks,
Mhm.
um, I think one of the most powerful things I've inevitably done is just paid ads. And I built an email list of 500,000 people in 3 months over one webinar presentation because I was 26 years old. I was selling a course on how to get a job.
Mhm.
Courses weren't really in at that time. That was like 12, 13 years ago. And I just remember the moment that the cost per lead was lower than what I was getting on sales, whether I was making enough of a profit or not, I had the opportunity to build a massive email list. And that is life changing. So, if you do have an organic strategy, I think that's really important, whether it's organic outreach, TED Talk, TEDx talks, whatever it is. But on top of that, I do think we still live in a world that is pay to play.
Yeah.
But you just have to be careful. And I know that people are fatigued because there's so many like Tinder swindler, inventing Anna sorts of feeling agencies out there. And I think that's why we've had so much success at Wise Whisper is that um, I don't know, I've been there, I've done that with my brand, and I'm serious about excellence for what we put out. And it's funny, I always used to think I'm a business owner that believes in being great. But it wasn't until I stepped into my true zone of genius, which is speech writing and keynote writing and all that kind of stuff, that it actually called me forward to be truly world class.
Mm.
And so that's also a message for anybody. I mean, after me spending 12 years in the career coaching space and having a book out that's career coaching focused and having trained thousands of career coaches, I can say one of the biggest career lessons I've learned is if you're in your zone of excellence and not in your zone of genius, it shows up. You do excellent work, but there's somebody that can do so much better than what you can give, and you owe it to yourself and your customers to really be in that unique ability. And if you don't know what that is, sometimes figuring out what that clarity is for you takes emotional labor. That takes therapy or friends conversations or books you need to read. So don't be afraid to do that emotional labor it takes to have clarity. That translates into your brand, your offerings, and your success.
So good. Ashley, what are your favorite platforms? Like, where have you put energy into organic traffic?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think with blogging, the rule of thumb that I live by is go wide, don't go deep.
Okay.
People talk about going deep, and I don't believe that. So, what I mean by that is it's going to serve you as a brand to be on 20 different news outlets versus 50 blog posts on one news outlet.
Okay.
So, I would say anybody listening, build a list of the lowest hanging fruit to the highest hanging fruit of outlets, right? So, what I mean by that is when I started Wall Street Journal, like Forbes, TEDx, all those felt really far away. But like there were smaller career blogs that felt more accessible that were taking contributors. And it's an avalanche effect. Once you write 3 for one, you can offer yourself up to the next, show them your work. Same thing, same thing, same thing. You create this press avalanche for yourself. Next thing you know, people are reaching out to you all the time. I just got reached out to by, Financial Times, Chicago Tribune. They just reach out to me because I'm just hiding all over the interwebs. And that's something
They're
you can.
looking for experts. They're looking for somebody to share their take, right? And with you having all of these assets, you're popping up, and that's what
Yeah,
happens. Yeah.
exactly.
Love it.
Omnipresence is powerful.
Yeah. What's your favorite social media platforms for yourself?
I think I have a podcast just like you, U-Turn Podcast, excited to have you on.
Yeah.
And I would say, I don't know, I guess that's called social media. If it's not, I would say Instagram. But um, the thing that I love about Instagram is not so much posting on there. It's Here's how I see it. If you're doing paid traffic, you're attracting leads to your Instagram page. You're getting people to DM you, sign up for something. Most of those leads are going to go to your page and look at your free organic content to decide if they trust you. So, any of our clients that have done pretty large engagements at Wise Whisper Agency, everything, we've had some clients come in and say, I want to get a book ghostwritten. I want to get a TED talk. I want to do this. I want to do this. And we are doing all of these things. It started with them saying, we found you on an ad, but then we looked at all of Ashley's content and it was really helpful. So even if those reels have 1,000 or 2,000 views, those are quality views. Those are people deciding and shopping. I think another powerful form of social media that people probably have a frenemy sort of relationship with is Yelp.
Okay.
If
Yeah.
you are a business, even if you have a national, international footprint, chances are if you're a practitioner that has something to offer in your local community, there's a lot of strategy around Yelp. Like, let's say you're in Los Angeles and you're a therapist, and there's like 50 therapists on the Los Angeles Yelp, but then you go to Orange County and there's only 10.
Yeah.
Maybe you want to list yourself in Orange County, even if you're a virtual therapist, and you want to collect your reviews on that account. So I think that's a very powerful place to go.
Yeah. Amazing. Okay, I want to ask you I'm a systems girl, right?
Yeah.
So what systems or strategies do you recommend to really maintain these strong relationships with your audience? Like how do you keep that going? What does that look like for you?
I've always been such a one thing thinker. I know that book, I think it's Gary Kessler, The One Thing. I almost didn't enjoy the book, even though it's an awesome book. 'Cause I was like, I already think this way so much. So maybe I had some like brain snobbery on myself with that one. But I was like, this is who I am. Like I feel seen. And so I would say when you talk about systems, sometimes people can think that there's many things going. But I just want to highlight for anybody listening, pick one platform for this year, for the next 12 months, and double down on it. Look at what your top 10, I don't want to say competitors, but people that are doing similar work to you, look at what they're doing that's working and decide how you want to show up on your platform. If it's Instagram, Twitter, whatever, maybe you have content pillars, 5 different pillars. A lot of people have pillars that are personal, like sharing about who they are. Then they have a pillar that's professional, like giving professional insight. And then maybe they have a pillar that's educational, tactical, and really batch your work. So once a month, sit down for a full work day and you create all that content that's going to go on that one platform. And that's all you really need to do. It doesn't have to be that big of a lift. I think people who are expecting their cognitive load to visit personal brand platforms multiple times throughout the week are hurting their workflows.
Yeah. And this next question kind of falls into this too. What would you say to that entrepreneur who's like, Ashley, this is just one more thing and I just don't have time? Is this a big is this a big lift, like you just said?
Yeah, I would say give it 2 rounds of your own, meaning if you are starting an Instagram, batch and create 2 months worth of content, do the competitor analysis or have somebody do that on your team. Ask someone on your team, what are the top 20 reels? Like, for example, Wise Whisper Agency is a speaking and personal branding agency, right? So I could ask an assistant, hey, can you look at the top 30 speaking and branding influencers and what reels of theirs did the best and write down those titles. I'm not going to copy those titles, but I'm going to understand what's trending, right? And that's how going to influence how I think about my content. So you can delegate some of it. I'm also really big on putting someone on my team. Oh my gosh, this sounds so vulnerable to say it this way, but who's like on a Honda price point with a Ferrari that oversees them, right? So do you have somebody on your team that you can pay $20 or $30 an hour to create content? And then do you have somebody that's more of $150 an hour to fine tooth comb and optimize that content? But I still think somebody needs to do it a little bit themselves to just create the first tone of voice and energy. And then you can delegate it to somebody else.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, I want to ask you, what tools or technology do you recommend for anybody looking to automate parts of their personal brand? Is there
Yeah.
anything you love that you want to share?
Yeah, I mean, we still use the basics. We still use Hootsuite to schedule a lot of things. There's a lot of research to show that Instagram Reels, TikTok videos, the algorithm knows when it's pre-scheduled and you might not get as many views. So it does pay to have somebody posting things in real time.
Yeah.
As far as tools, I don't use AI for any writing, but
Okay.
I do use it for brainstorming and data. And I do use it for titles. I think that AI is so brilliant for titles. You have to remember, like TED Talks, for example, their title is the gateway to their virality, right? Like it's like going to a white elephant party. If all you have to work off of is the gifts in front of you, you're going to pick a pretty wrapped GIF. You're not going to pick the GIF that looks like it was jumbled at the last minute. It's the same thing with titles. So no matter how good your talk is, no matter how good your reel is, it needs a good title. And I think ChatGPT, Gemini, Perplexity, all of those are awesome. And if you have a really bad title in mind, you can tell it, give me an SEO optimized version of this concept as a title,
So
and
good.
it'll do it quick.
Yeah. Okay. Do you want to, is there any warning or anything you want to share when you said, I do not use it for my writing? Do you want to go deeper on that?
Yeah, I think that when we look at a speech at Wise Whisper Agency, like there's really three layers, and there's so much to speech writing that we do. But the first layer is the bones, right? Like if you're giving a TEDx speech or a keynote or corporate, whatever, you want to have your title dialed in. And then after that, you open up your talk. Usually we open up speeches with a powerful story, and then we have our core talking points.
Okay.
Anybody listening to this podcast is going to have a few different matters of subject matter expertise, right? That
Yeah.
you might say, I'm really good at lead generation, personal branding, and marketing. But if I start talking to you for a while, you are probably going to tell me original thinking on one of those things even more than the others. Like
Mm,
I'm going to hear your thoughts on this, marketing. And I'm like, okay, I've heard that before, but you do have some hot takes, but tell me a little bit about this. There's going to be one of those two or three content topics that you have more original content, and that's what you want to write with. Especially if it's a talk that's going to be viewed over and over and given over and over. So you want to tune into what is your original thinking. That creates your bones. You can't have more than 2 to 3 points in a 20-minute talk. In a 45 to 60-minute talk, no more than like 4 points, I would say. Tops five, that's a squeeze. And so you want to have those bones clear. And then the second piece of a speech is the soul. Like,
mm,
so the first part is the brain, your original thinking. The second part is the heart and the soul. We had a client, and he crafted a keynote and also a TEDx talk with our help. And it was about the banking system and how there's a lot of racism and marginalization of women and minorities in the American banking system. So the bones of the talk, the brain of the talk was his talking points. But when we step back and we really looked at his talk, the heart of the talk, it was about giving people a second chance, seeing people beyond paperwork, redemption, and looking at the banking system not through just the lens of numbers, right?
yeah.
And then the third piece is the real heartbeat. It's the message of the talk. And usually you can get that later. So this applies whether it's a speech or anything that you're doing in your brand, just to kind of understand where is your original thinking, what is your thoughts really about, what is your work really about, and what is your message.
Yeah, so good. Yeah, I mean, we use AI and we use Perplexity, ChatGPT, all those things. But a lot of times when you go type it in, the first response is just so fluffy. It's grabbing from whatever's on the internet. So if there's something not well written, it's helping you grab another repurposed version of that. So I like what you're saying of, use it for certain things, right? But really make sure you're bringing your originality to it, or
Yeah.
it's going to feel like everybody else, and that's not going to get you scroll stopping or going viral for sure.
Exactly. Like some of our writers on my team have written TV shows like The New Girl, Succession, Lizzie McGuire. Like if you think about Grey's Anatomy, for example, anybody who's watched that show, at the end of that show, they zoom out and instead of talking about the hospital scene, they make it a talk about life. That kind of content, like I have not seen AI be able to create. And that's the kind of content that gives people a range of emotions that make them want to work with you, buy from you, trust you, connect with you. And so I think AI is just, sometimes I wonder if all of our social media is just going to be a bunch of bots commenting to each other at some point.
Yeah, and I've already seen it. My friend actually just sent me a message and said, "What do you think? Is this a bot right here?" And then some other friends chimed in and said, "Yes, here's how you know." And it is scary because you could be having a conversation on your Instagram, in your, back and forth in comments, and it's not even a human. So we do have to be watching for things like that. So, first of all, if you've gotten value out of this episode, make sure you hit the like button and let us know. In the comments, I'd love to hear, do you have a personal brand? Maybe you're thinking about starting one. Fill us in. And then, Ashley, before we wrap, what is one last piece of advice you'd love to share for somebody who's maybe thinking about heading this direction? Maybe a TED Talk, maybe just starting their personal brand. What would you like to say?
Ultimately, when you're in business, that question in business that I've gotten that's really always sat with me is, who do you want to be a hero to?
Mm.
And I think ultimately we're all here for something. We all want something out of it for ourselves. We all want something out of it for the world. We want to give something. So I would say, if you could ask yourself the question, what is it that you really get, that you really have down, that you really understand, that if the world understood it, everything would be better? That's the thing I hope you share.
So good. Ashley, thank you so much for the value you've added here today on the Well-Oiled Operations podcast. Please like, subscribe, rate, review, share. It means the world to us. And wherever you watch and listen, my name is Stacy Tuschl, your guide to streamlining and scaling your business. We'll see you in the next video.